world of business and intellectualism haven't always been easy bedfellows. The two haven't always seen eye to eye about the way money should be made. But of course, that's not the case here at Cass Business School, where we think that there's a perfect relationship between the two. After all, I'm paying thousands for the privilege of studying here. I'm now joined by visiting Professor Stefan Stern. He's also a director of strategy at the communications company Edelman. Stefan, what is the point of business schools? I mean, is it really about business or is it about intellectualism?
I think we're in one of those interesting trade-offs here where you don't necessarily want to overemphasize either very narrow, obscure perhaps research that is of very little practical benefit or of relevance to business people. But at the same time, if we were purely in the world of business situations outside the building and not thinking hard about what they actually mean, not getting good data, not researching, not having some theory of business as well as practice, that would be wrong too. So there's a trade-off to be managed, I think.
I think the big thing is that no one considers business to be almost a science. But actually, over the years, we have seen that there are many things that can be measured. There are human psychologies behind business that can almost be observed and conclusions be derived from. So actually, really, business people should be taking a closer look at some of the intellectual developments. But why isn't that happening?
Well, I think business is, in a sense, both art and science, just like management, art and science. After all, Frederick Taylor gave us his scientific management 100 years ago or more, and that was absolutely influential throughout industrialization throughout the world. I think we need to be serious about data. Everyone tells us that data is terribly important. We need to understand customers as individuals better and better. We need to capture all this digital information about them. So the idea that we can't be scientific must be wrong. On the other hand, we have got to be practical. Business is a practical matter. We shouldn't be embarrassed about that. Working with people is practical. It's about human relationships. So again, I would say, yes, respect hard data, research. It's absolutely invaluable. We should not be dismissive of it, as long as it's also leading into practice, into action, ultimately.
It seems to me that there's a bit of a myth of the wheeler-dealer. Maybe Lord Alan Sugar is a very good example of someone who's come from a fruit stall and has become very famous in business. Is that because I think many people think of business as almost a natural-born gift, a skill that you either have or you don't? Is that, do you think, one of the main reasons behind suspicion of study of business?
I think that's a very interesting point. Of course, it suits some entrepreneurs and some business leaders to say that they were a natural, that they just had it, that they hadn't really thought about what they were doing, they were going on their instincts, and you're born with it, you can't become it. That suits them because it puts other people off from entering business. It reduces, it's a barrier to entry, as you would say. But I don't think that's true. I think we know that human beings can be taught, that we can learn, we can get better at what we're doing. And while we are not all natural-born entrepreneurs necessarily, we can all be business-like. And we can all learn leadership and management skills. We need to think hard about these things, and we need to be serious and professional about them. If managing people, leading organizations is a deep responsibility, it's not something to be flippant about, and it's not something to just be purely instinctive about. There has to be thought as well as action. And even Lord Sugar, other famous entrepreneurs and business leaders you might care to mention who seem to be instinctive, natural performers, there's some serious hard thought going on there too, perhaps in private, and then when they're ready to act, they act decisively.
What's interesting about being in an MBA class here at Cass Business School is that you see how different countries have very different cultures towards learning. And so in our class, we have lots of people from India and China, and you can see that maybe in 30 years, the future business leaders of the world will probably come from those places. And actually, that would probably prove that learning business, studying business is a step towards being successful in business.
Yes, and I think you've touched on something very important too, because perhaps in Britain there was a tendency to have a certain narrowness, insularity, famously, about Great British tradition. And then indeed there is a Great British tradition in business, in entrepreneurship, and so on. But the future is clearly international, highly diverse, plural, all these good words. And this is one of the great things about CAT, of course, is this great mix of nationalities and cultures. I think that's bound to be productive. That's bound to be a sort of fertile training ground for people. And the wider, deeper understanding we have of different parts of the world, where, after all, people are planning to go out and make money and sell goods and services and try and build businesses, the better they will be. So I'm all for that mix. I'm all for that internationalism.
It's almost like looking into a glass ball into the future of business. So, Stefan Stern, thank you very much.
Pleasure.